Hi, I'm Jay Jacobs, and welcome to another episode of Going Beyond the Scale. If you've been following our journey when we release Going Beyond the Scale, whether it's the live videos, the podcast, if you're part of our Facebook group, you've probably heard me say many, many times that the whole idea behind going beyond the scale, the vision behind it, kind of what I would call almost like the mantra is for people to live the life that they love and to live it well. And the reason why I think that's important is that it's kind of both of those spheres of things are very important in us really living an amazing life, a life of quality, a one of contribution to ourselves and a contribution to others. And today I'm extremely excited to have the ability to share with you guys a good friend of mine and a guest, somebody I've known for quite some time, somebody that I believe is a great example that he's living the life that he loves and living it well. And I'm going to make sure people get this. Like, when I say that, it's not that any of us or Chris, who you will meet in a second, is doing it perfectly. I don't know anybody that's doing any of this perfectly. So when I say this, I don't want you guys to be going like, oh, that's a great idea. Like, you know, live the life that you love and live it well. I can't do that. Well, no, you can. We all can. And it's not meant, I want to make sure you hear this today. This is never and never will be. And this community is not about perfection. So to me, the reason why I believe Chris is living the life that he loves and living it well is because he is literally doing that, and he's doing it as best he can. And he's also open and sharing the things that he has as challenges. And the other reason why I want to mention it too is because he's extremely fit. He looks fit. Like, you saw Chris, you'd be like, I wish I had his muscles and that whole, I mean, there's people have this whole squirrely world of what they think they're all of a sudden they will be better if they have a particular body or size or money or whatever. Look, everybody's got different things. So Chris is here because I want him to share two things. Well, many more than two things, but I want him to open up really with why even join this community. And what you'll hear more and more people talking about is the tale of their scale, because it's the genesis of a lot of what happens in people's early life and it kind of goes forward. So with all that being said, Chris, are you there?
I am here. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. And what I love about Chris is we talked last week. We kind of did a little prep beforehand. I wanted to make sure that I was able to, kind of understand the things he wanted to share. And then what typical Chris form, I'm downstairs in the gym working out, and he shoots me a shot at him. It's leg day for Chris. And there he is, showing me his monster quads. And so then, I mean, for me, I kind of am a leg guy. I'm working on my upper body, but when you've been over 400 pounds and carrying around all that stuff, I'm like, okay, Chris, well, you got great legs. I'm going to show you mine too. So we kind of did a little leg dance back and forth. So thank you for that, Chris. I love the timing. Love the timing. So when I introduce people to you, the first thing I introduced you as is a dad. I mean, I know, and being a dad, and I know you well enough to know that there's a lot you've accomplished in your life. There was a picture I was going to post of you, doing the legs today, and then you're like, "That's not me." You're like, and I said, "Well, send me the one you want." And what did? No surprise, you great typical dad shot. And so before we get into a bunch of other stuff, I just want to kind of like, that's a recent thing for you. So what has that done for you as a person and you as your individual journey as well? What has that done for you, Chris?
Oh man, it's the culmination of everything that I've ever worked for my entire life. You try to be healthy, you try to be successful, you try to be a good person. But what the ultimate goal for me was, it was somewhat internal motivation and probably from my faith. But when you have kids, it's different. It redefines everything and makes you want to do it to be better in every way for them, as a model, as a teacher, as a father, as a friend, all of it. And to give them things, so you no longer want success and money for the sake of success and money. You want it to be able to do more for your children and your family. So it takes the things that maybe were already inside that you wanted and redefines why you want them now. So I love it. Love it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to open this as well, because everybody, no matter what age you're at, there are different parts of your journey, and there's certain things that were defining moments. But I know for you, when that happened, it was a major shift. If we backtrack a little, there's two things I wanted to open this up with was why did you, and I'm not sure which chicken and the egg is it, why did you join this particular community and you have this passion about body composition? And also, was it connected to what is the tail of your scale, that early thing? Because when somebody looks at you, they were like, this guy's jacked, he's in great shape, he must have lived this way his entire life. How do those two things come together? What is that all about?
Well, that's loaded. There's a lot of questions there. The first one, with what attracted me to the group and why I even reached out, besides the fact that we're friends, is the title alone. The title alone. It is unfortunate that so much emphasis today is placed on the scale, on a regular old-fashioned scale with a number. And it's unfortunate because it sets a really bad precedent and expectation for people when they look at it. And it's disappointing. It's like, to me, BMIs. BMIs are one indicator, but they're not a great one. If you guys saw pictures of me in person, besides my just little bald head here, you'd see that I'm a pretty fit guy. And if you went by traditional measurement, scale, by height, by age, and by BMI, I would be considered overweight and borderline obese. So those measurements are no longer valid today. So just the title, Jay, alone of the tail of your scale and going beyond the scale, that just resonated. And I said, hey, that's exactly where we need to be today. I want to help there. So that's number one. So that's number one, how I reached out and wanted to get involved. Number two, how I kind of got here today is, well, I struggled when I was younger. So I'm one of two in my family. I have a brother who's younger than me by 11 months, Irish twin. And when we were growing up, he was like the epitome of health. He was born with really good genetics. I was born with moderate. And so to have a younger brother that's almost your peer, just outperform, outshine you in every physical way, in appearance, in athletics, in performance, everything. And then me, again, being younger, uneducated, not knowing much about eating or exercise, I didn't do much right with either one. And so then that gap got even larger between us. And so I had a really poor self-image. And when I hit about 11 years old, you really start to become your own person at that time. And I still remember it. We talked last week, and I remember the day I was in my bedroom. I closed the door, and I had one of those long mirrors, and I was getting dressed, and I said, I hate myself. Now, 11-year-old kid thinking I hate myself is a bad thing. And that's when it kind of clicked. And I grew up with my mom being in and out of Weight Watchers. So I knew that would work for her. It didn't always work long term. She'd get out back and forth. But I went to her and I said, Mom, I want to go with you. Will you take me to Weight Watchers? Because I knew I needed to do or wanted to do something. So she took me, and then within 6 months, I was at the goal weight, as we're talking about weight today. And again, at that age, weight probably is a little more relevant because there's not really body composition at 10. I mean, there is, but there isn't.
Right.
So I got to that and then started exercising at about 13 and just never looked back. So I set that early foundation as a young child, kind of, and just never stopped. So I've been exercising for 32 years. I just tipped my hat to how old I am, but have been exercising since and eating moderately well the entire time. And it doesn't mean, Jay, that I don't, like you said early in your opening about perfection.
Yeah.
Far from perfect. I enjoy some naughty foods, probably too much, but I at least understand the impact of what those things do to you. Same thing with sitting at a computer and typing all day. I understand what the impacts are, so I make other intentional decisions throughout the day to help offset those things. So that's at least how I got involved, where I started, and how I ended up here today.
Now, one of the things I learned on Biggest Loser, they would bring a lot of former athletes on the show, and this is a question for you because you have a very athletic body and you've always kind of been in that zone. A lot of people that were athletic in high school and college, or maybe even professionally, once they start to no longer be in that competitive mode, not all of them, but there are many of them, what would happen is they were fueling their, as you know, body composition. They had the muscle mass, they had all that going on, and they were fueling their body for competition. Competition goes away, and then they never shifted that, and they basically just kept eating, and so they put on a ton of weight. So were you, I know you're fit, but did you do any kind of sports at all in high school or college or anything?
Sure. So in high
Okay.
school, I played a few different sports. I ran track, baseball, and football. And I played football for a few years. I was team captain, quarterback, but I'm a little guy. I'm like a hobbit. So by this end of sophomore year, I couldn't see over the line anymore. And the
Wow.
guys kept getting bigger and bigger, and I'm just this 5'7" little guy. So I switched to a different position and then eventually just stopped because they kept getting bigger and bigger, and I wanted to not get crushed. So I stopped
Yeah.
playing football. I played baseball through high school, and then when I got to college, I just did intermediate, or what is that? The non-sport team
Intramural.
sports.
Intramural.
Intramural.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just did intramurals just for fun,
Yeah.
but I've never stopped the exercise part and the conditioning.
Yeah. The other part that I would mention too is people that are fit, as you know, they can look that way. And the other part that I'm very curious about, and I didn't ask you last week about this, but having gone through this myself in certain regards and been around a lot of people, what are you doing actually also for yourself from a medical perspective? Because you are fit, but let's face it, it wasn't that long ago. I was with Bob Harper like 2 weeks in his box in New York working, had a CrossFit session with him and some other people 2 weeks before he had that near fatal heart attack. I mean, he was lucky because he had the Widowmaker. Most people have like a 6% chance of living from that. There are people that look like you that drop dead. And I think that's what's important, because I think there's this idea that just because somebody's fat or overweight or obese, whatever you want to call it, chubby, I don't care what you want to call the languaging behind it, that those people are always at risk, but everybody's at risk. So for yourself, what are you also doing, or you can share with people whether they're fit or not? What have you found that works? And especially now as your dad, what do you do?
Sure. So first I want to comment on the bigger part. The word I like to use, Jay, is fluffy. It just sounds nice.
I love Fluffy. Fluffy's great. Fluffy's a good
So
one.
I like fluffy. I like fluffy. A little fluffier than maybe you want to be. It just sounds nice.
Okay. You're a
So
nice
I
guy.
have, like I said, my brother has the amazing genetics and I don't. So I took the history and heritage of my family with high blood pressure and risk of high cholesterol, and that somehow all got dumped into me. I'm old enough to remember the movie Twins with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito. I'm like Danny DeVito. He got the Arnold Schwarzenegger genes. I got the stuff left over. So on the outside, I might look fit and I do try to stay healthy in general. But because I have those elevated risk factors in my history of the family, I monitor my blood every year. And pretty much every 6 months, I get full blood panels done just to double check, because I do struggle with cholesterol and blood pressure. So I have to be very intentional with what I do and how I eat to keep those under control, because I don't want to have to go on drugs if it's not absolutely necessary. Now, I'm not saying that taking those things are bad. It's much better to take some of those things that have those high risk factors. Right. But if there are things that I can do, Jay, to avoid it, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you try? Why wouldn't you try?
Yeah, and I think that's another part that it's not, we don't knock anything because everybody's at a different place. But I will say, one of the things I did experience, and soon we're going to be finishing up a edited podcast with Dr. Zinga. Many people don't understand that show may have been squirrely because it's a reality show, and there's all kinds of stuff you do because you make it dramatic. But that show was grounded in medical testing and monitoring constantly. And what a lot of people don't really know is that when people had, let's say they had high blood pressure, they had cholesterol, whatever, obviously we were eating better, we were moving differently, we were medically monitored. There were people that they took them off the medicine, they were fine. There were people that after the show that stayed exercising, I think I talked about this, the ones that actually, even if they put weight back on, the ones that kept exercising didn't have to go back on medication. So why I'm bringing this up is because when we talk about going beyond the scale, it is this holistic approach. It's sort of like, it's not just the number or just body composition. It's the mental aspect, as you know, is a big part of it. And the medical part is a big part, because if we don't have some understanding of that, it just can catch us by surprise. And all of us, I love the fact that what you said, every 6 months, once a year, you're paying attention to that. And I think as we keep going forward and interviewing people, the more we can bring up the medical part of it as well, I think it's helpful. So I'm glad to hear that you're doing that as well, because yeah, I mean, sometimes when people are really fit looking, they're like, I really don't, I can eat whatever I want. It doesn't really matter. And, so I'm glad to hear that, it makes a big difference.
Well, it's like you said, Jay, when you said going beyond when you have this going beyond the scale is one form of measurement.
Mhm.
The scale in and of itself is not evil. It's just without
Right.
a real good understanding of it, it can take you down a very dark path that you don't want to go. And you don't even need to necessarily go there. It's just like body composition. If you just used an in-body body comp to find out
Mhm.
where you're at with fat versus muscle, you think if I got that right where the numbers are, I'm healthy.
Mhm.
No. If I just look healthy. No. If I just have my blood work under control, am I healthy? No. It's really trying to get all those things working synergistically together so you can do what you said, and that's live life to the fullest and really enjoy it.
Yeah. The other part when you said, it's funny because I've never heard anybody, I've heard a lot of stuff, Chris. I've never heard anybody use the term naughty. So you have a few new, you got a fluffy term. You're doing fluffy. I like that. You're talking naughty. That's your naughty food, because Jenny and I did a video one time, and it was her whole thing. She wanted to do a cheat day. And so I'm like, Jen, what are you talking about? I don't use the word cheat. I don't think it's a smart word. I use treat. So for me, you use naughty. To me, when I'm posting about something, to me, it's a treat. And I think that's also the other part of this, because people, any of us that we'll use your term, fluffy. It's an all or nothing. I'll never do, like, that stuff doesn't work. And so for myself, when I'm working with people, navigating with people, I don't know what the exact code is, because there isn't a code. It's like a personal choice. But like, if you can't sit down and actually enjoy whatever a piece of cake, pizza, to me, that if you just keep constantly trying to restrict, it's like a freaking rubber band. I don't know about you, Chris, but every time I can't have it, or if I'm not working, if I'm doing all those things back and forth, it just falls apart. Now, do you have times where, even though you've been quote unquote good or staying on track, do you ever have you had times where it's like, it was a year. Years like my brain was not there and I just started going downward. I mean, do you ever have that, or is it like a shorter time frame? I'm just curious.
No, I think I'm like everyone. I have ebbs and flows of good. I don't even like saying good. I'll just say balanced, healthy eating. And then I have times where I might enjoy, rather than say naughty, but I might enjoy something. Like I love peanut butter cups, chocolate peanut butter, Culver's for us Midwesterners. I do enjoy that stuff. But there are times when I see the problem with a lot of that stuff that I just talked about, not so much like the pizza stuff and chips, but that sweetness, is that sugar is like a drug for the body. And so when you have more of it, it desensitizes you to it, which means you need more and crave more of it. And so you got to be really careful when you have it. And that's why I said, you got to try to be intentional with everything you do, both exercise and food, because it can get out of control pretty quickly. So as long as you stay aware, stay intentional with it. Like if you're going to enjoy some peanut butter cup, take your time, turn off the darn TV, put your phone down, don't YouTube, don't Facebook, sit there and enjoy that little sucker. Enjoy it and know what you're doing so that you don't overindulge. You just enjoy it. And there's also times of the day that make more sense. For example, after you're done exercising, it's like taking a sponge and wringing a sponge out that's wet. If you put it right back in the bucket, what does it do? It sucks the water right back up. So after you're done exercising, your body's kind of wrung out. It's used up a lot of its stored glycogen, stored sugar. So your body's very receptive to it. So it likes having that stuff after a workout in a good way, because it can use it to rebuild and replenish what you just used. But if you don't eat for a while, you don't do anything after your exercise, and you wait and you say you have it before bed, the downside is your body doesn't need it then. It already has the sugar level balances, because if you're not eating enough during the day, guess what? Your liver will kick in, pump out some stuff to balance out your body chemistry. Then you put more sugar in at night. And it says, wait a minute, Jay, I don't need it. My shelves are all nice and stored. So guess where the sugar goes? In the areas of the fluff where you don't want it. So even timing of certain things can be beneficial. So you work out, then you have some sugar stuff. Not only are you not going to want as much because you just exercised, but your body will use more of it. So that's why there's not any one, it's not like a good and a bad. There's not an absolute in any terms. It's trying to live that balance so that you can enjoy your life, whether it's as a dad or a fitness guy or as a host of a great show here. I mean, you're just trying to live life better.
Yeah, I'm glad. One of the things that we talked about was when I got back from seeing Huizenga after 10 years from the finale. It was nice because he was very complimentary of what I was able to accomplish. And I also had him do a DEXA scan. So InBody, you and I are big InBody fans. We know it makes a big difference. It's a medically sound device. It's well respected. But I also had him do the DEXA because he had 2 before. So this was my 3rd DEXA. So we had some history there. It's kind of interesting. And because of that, that was the other reason why I was glad when you reached out to me, because the time, sometimes timing happens. And so I've always been very cardio centric because that was one of the things we had on the show. It made most sense for dropping most weight. The things we did for the Last Chance workout are good for TV, but we weren't lifting weights. We weren't doing that stuff. So Huizenga says to me, he says, look, we know where you were genetically with your muscle. And he said, you've lost more muscle since the last time. And he said, it makes sense because when you were at 400 pounds, you were carrying a whole boatload on your body. So when you dropped all this weight, you don't have that same thing going on there. And I was tending to do cardio. So I said to him, what's the prescription? He said, look, here's what I want you to do is drop 15 pounds of body fat and gain 15 pounds of muscle. So back to the scale, he's actually saying, I don't care if you change your scale number, but he specifically wants to do the composition part. So I'd said to you, and it's the other part you'll see in the podcast when we do it. He said, and I'm not saying I'm this athlete, but he said, look, athletes have a team of people. And he said, I will tell anybody that wants to make a transformation, they should find a team of people. So when in our pre-talk that we did last week, I said, Chris, I want you to be one of my muscle mentors. And I have a few different, because there's different people, there's all kinds of people that are out there. And what's interesting to me, the reason why I want to have you as being one of the mentors, and I want to have a few others, is because I kind of know that if you have more than one, and people, as you know, people are different in how they approach stuff. People see different things. So I want to be able to use what I'm learning from Huizenga from a medical perspective, because I asked him some stuff, and he knows things, because he was an athletic trainer for the Raiders, and so he knows what he's talking about. But I want to have people like you and I, which are lay people, that we know enough to be dangerous, and we're not the high Olympic athlete trainer people or whatever. But I want to have a wide range of people, because I think that if we're doing that and you and I are kind of sharing that, there's going to be somebody who's going to come along, they're going to hear you saying something to them. It's like, that Chris guy, I like what he has to say, because sometimes people like one person, they don't like the other person, whatever. So you are the first person I'm asking. And I did ask Huizenga, which he was obviously yes, but I said, I want you to be on my team. He said, yes. I want you to be on my team, Chris. I'm going to have probably maybe 5 or 6 people that are going to be on the team. That'll be, when I'm updating the website, those people are going to be on there. And my main thing is that personally, I want to make a change. But more importantly, I want us to kind of be in this conversation for others to find for themselves, like, how does that fit for them? And I think that's going to be an interesting kind of a beta way for us to look at how that happens. So I want to thank you. I know you had already said yes, and I'm putting you on the spot anyway, because I want you to say yes still, because what I love is the fact that your whole let's also go back to the InBody for a second. So how long have you been doing the InBody? How long have you been doing that? You've been a big fan of that for a while.
I am, and I have been. So for any of the listeners out there that don't know what InBody is, it's a scale that has the ability to measure using low electric impedance your body composition. By body composition, we mean fat versus water versus muscle, intracellular, extracellular, all these different measurements to say, not just a picture of Chris or Jay, what do we look like, but what are we made of? What's the stuff underneath the skin? Okay, so when Jay asks me, what do I think of InBody? That's what it's measuring. A scale just measures downward pressure, what's on top of it, how much weight. Doesn't matter what it's made of, just what it is. So to answer your question, how long have I been doing it? I bet you it's been 10 years on and off, and probably very religiously now about the last 6. The data and the information is so helpful because the scale, what like Dr. H just asked you to do, he asked you to lose 15 and gain 15. Well, how do you do that if you don't have an InBody, a DEXA, or some other tool that can measure the stuff that's under the skin? Otherwise, all you've got is a typical scale. The scale doesn't tell you anything. That's why going beyond the scale resonated. It's so important to me because that's exactly it. So that's why I'm a big fan of it, because it helps me see what trajectory am I on? Not just where am I at today, where am I going? Where was I at last year, last month, 2 years ago? Am I going the right direction? Am I maintaining? Am I falling off? And like you said, that's why Dr. H was so impressed with you over the last 10 years from when you were on the show, because so many people, they carry around all that weight. They have more muscle tissue. So their furnace of burning calories just sitting at home is bigger than when they leave the show. When they leave the show, they've lost a lot of weight, a lot of fat, a lot of fluff.
Right.
They also lost some of the good stuff.
Yep.
And when you lose some of that good stuff, your metabolism goes down, which means what you did 3 months ago when you started the show, what you could eat and not gain, you can't do that today, even though you lost all that weight, because your internal furnace got smaller.
Yep.
So I'm a huge fan of InBody because it's a really nice way for people to be able to see what's going on the inside. So I don't just gauge my health and happiness by what I look at in the mirror. There are other ways.
Yeah, and I think that I really want to make sure that people get the point of this. This is not body positivity because then all of a sudden you're a better person because you have more muscle or you lost body fat. My personal way of looking at body positivity is actually well-being. And there are parts that, like what you said, that we can make a change with. I know I've kind of outed myself from the perspective of one of the major things that almost didn't get me on the show, and people hear that in the other podcasts, was I had a near fatal heart arrhythmia, not from heart disease, but from sleep apnea that I did not know that I had. Scared the hell out of me. I was 1,000% compliant on the show, dropped 181 pounds. I felt really good. Everything was great. It wasn't like it bothered me to use the machine, but it's just kind of like, it's like, why do I really need to do it? And I didn't feel any better with wearing it. And so with Huizenga, he actually was like, I get why you didn't do it. He said, if you actually don't feel anything from this and any change, I kind of see where you weren't compliant. But here's the point. The reason why I'm bringing this up and why I asked you about like even your background, and I know you had lost your father at a very young age. I lost my dad in August. He was 83. But my dad basically, I'm not diminishing it, but what I would say is he French fried his brain because my dad had sleep apnea, never diagnosed till he was later in life. And it was too late, but he had 1 stroke, 2 strokes, 3 strokes, never had the physical paralysis, but it kept just beating his brain up. And so what I knew, my dad was 20 years in front of me, and what I knew was happening, my cockiness about not needing the sleep machine anymore, even though my sleep apnea was still bad, off the chart. Before I went to see Huizenga, I went to a pulmonologist. They checked it again. We ordered a new machine, and I told Huizenga when I was there, and I charted every day on my smartphone, Jay Instagram account. I literally, what I love is there's an app that's there, and it shows me every single day what's going on. And it's going to take me time to get my brain and body to do this. And I'm bringing this up, Chris, because you don't have to be fluffy. But I will tell you, one of the things that I have learned is many people, and especially even people like yourself that have like strength in your neck and especially a lot of people that are athletes, sleep apnea is a bigger deal than most people realize. And I never really realized until I had the thing from the doctor. So I want to also insert that here as well. And I mean, so I'm going to go and just ask you, because do you sleep? Do you have good sleep health? Are you a good sleeper? All that kind of stuff, or not? Or do you know?
I'm one of those people that functions on less sleep than what you should get. Some of it has to do with being a dad, and some just that I'm always busy. So I typically average 6 to 7 hours of sleep instead of the 7 to 9 where you should. And I don't know if I have sleep apnea, but I'm very sensitive to weight. So I'll give you an example. And again, I'm very transparent. So I'll tell you, I weigh about 185 pounds. And if I fluctuate more than 5 to 7 pounds up from where I'm at today, even if it's muscular, if I start to get a little heavier, I snore more per my wife, and I end up waking up more through the night, which could be an indication of poor sleep. So for me, weight does, and in this case, weight, not just body count, but
Yeah, yeah,
weight
yeah.
does influence my quality of sleep.
Well, I'm just going to say to you that that you should at least check it. Now, you don't have to have the wire thing. Like the last one I had done, I've had two or three of the wire ones, which you look like you're a bomb. I mean, it's very scary looking. Matthew, look, he's like, my son freaked out when he saw me one day. I sent him a picture, like I got the wires all over. He was like, ah! He didn't like that. But they had the last one I did. It was literally this little silly thing on your wrist and a like thing on your thumb or your finger. But what I will tell you is, I'm the kind of a person that if I wasn't using the machine, I can sleep 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night and wake up no headache, not tired, not falling asleep in the middle
Wow.
of the day. So that's one of the things that what I will tell you is what I've learned is that whatever a person thinks is the symptoms is not across the board. So when you told me what you said right there, I am not a doctor. I don't know, but I don't snore. I have really bad sleep apnea. Okay. If you're snoring, sometimes it's an indication. If you're waking up, that's sometimes an indication. And all I can tell you is that you should at least have it checked out because there are all kinds of things that they do nowadays. And it is probably, and Huizenga said the same thing, it's probably one of the biggest silent killers that, and it's, you don't have to die from it, but it literally, it starves oxygen from your brain and it starves oxygen from your at a cellular level. So I kind of figure that I'm like the poster child of. I almost didn't make it on the show because of it. Huizenga, quite frankly,
Wow.
saved my life because of it, and he didn't beat me up because I wasn't doing it, but he kind of saw that I was recommitted to talking about it, and so I've just kind of gone. I don't know if you can get it checked out. You need to get it checked out. Anybody, I'm just talking about anybody. So I think it's been talked about, but I think it's really important. I will tell you, it's if you are not a sleeper, I look at it as exercise. I've said because my dad was a farmer, and on our family, this is back to story, tale of a scale. Our family, when I grew up, was people that slept were lazy people. We made fun of people that slept. I made fun of my wife. It's like, and that's just a nasty thing to do. So my dad made fun of it and kind of French fried his brain, and I was making fun of people, and it was French frying me over. So all I'm saying is, like, I'm the worst person for the sleep thing, but I think sometimes, when you talk about your faith, Chris, it's like I kind of feel like I was saved to come back a little bit to like, you might want to share this with a few people, and I have done that over time. So I didn't think about it to bring it up today in conversation, but knowing you're very fit, I also like that's not always evident. So just
Right.
I'll check back with you again. Just see. It's like you don't have to, but I just figured I'd mention that. So
Is that an easy thing to check, Jay? I really don't know. Like, how do you get is it an app or what do you got to do? Talk to your
well,
doctor?
no. What you do is what you want to do is just in your doctor GP. You just say, hey, by the way, I've heard about it. I had a friend that mentioned it to me. Here's and what they do is literally they'll give you a little thing to fill out. Like it's like a little quiz. I fill out everything on there where I have no symptoms of any of the stuff they fill out. And you give me a test, I'm a mess. So what they would do, the first thing that they do is the doctor would be like, I don't know if you have it or not, but he said, you have this, you have and this. And they're like, oh, you know what? We should test you. And then with they test you, literally, you pick up a thing. It's like a little thing that fits on your wrist and it's on the one finger and you go to bed and it just reads whatever you read your oxygen in the night. And if they feel that you need a more extensive test, they can do that. But for a lot of people, that thing is so much easier. So it's very simple. Just ask your doctor. Anybody out there that's listening to this, just ask your doctor, and it's worth it. It's a good thing for you to know if you have it because it is truly a silent killer of people. Not overnight. Some people they can die of it. You can literally. There's football players that had those massive necks. Some of them they just shut down. There have been documents of those guys just happen to happen. But so let's check into it anyway. The other thing I do want to I want to make sure the other part that we talked about a little bit. You've been for is it 15 years you've been with Johnson Fit? Is that what it is?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
15 years.
And I want you to say I know it posted, but what is your title again?
So I'm the senior global product manager in charge of our strength division.
Okay, so now you can see why I'm a smart person. If I'm going to ask to be a muscle man, a person, it's a global strength person. Like, I mean, that's a good title. So that means you know a few things. So so in the world, if you've been doing this for 15 years and what you're doing, I mean, you are right smack dab in the middle of what's going on. So with everything that's been happening, what I want to kind of close this conversation around is now we're in this spot where there's people working out home, people are starting to go back to gyms or whatever. But give us some highlights from what you guys have either experienced in the past year, or and where do you see this stuff going with, and what are some suggestions around whether people have equipment, don't have equipment, or like just what do you see? What's some things you can share with us?
Wow, that's again like one of your earlier
I
ones.
know
That's a loaded
it's a
question.
lot. It's a big one.
There's a lot going on. So you've got a lot of people that struggled during the pandemic that had routines, and unfortunately, as humans, we act a lot out of habit. Different experts will say between 40 to 50% of everything we do in a day comes out of our habits. And so when COVID hit, life changed, habits got broken. And normally it's really, really hard, Jay, to break a habit. It's easier to change a habit than it is to break a habit, because
Good
your
point.
body
Yep.
will and your mind will still crave that end whatever. You just can reprogram it better if you look for other ways to get there. If you just try to cut it off, your body fights you on it in a lot of ways. So when the
Good point.
pandemic hit, people didn't have an option of changing their habits. They were just taken from them. And that's where you had some people doing crazy things. It's why in our industry, we saw retail, which we call residential home-based products, explode, and to the point where you couldn't get them anywhere. And so because people had that drug of I have to exercise versus just being active, maybe go for a walk. Although in the winter, it's kind of harder.
Yeah.
But people needed to keep that habit going. So on one end, we had that area just exploding. On the commercial end, in your health clubs, in your YMCAs, fitness centers, dues-paying facilities, they were just shut down. You couldn't go. Then you have the other thing where you mentioned you like doing cardio. How many people like doing high-intensity, hard cardio with a mask where you can't breathe and it restricts your oxygen?
Yeah.
It's kind of
Not
hard.
many.
So you saw habits change even when they opened back up. We noticed that more people were moving into the free weight and strength training areas and away from cardio, because cardio is very uncomfortable when you can't breathe freely. So there's been a lot of things that have changed over the year. We're still yet to be determined what's going to happen in the commercial market with as far as purchases from that group. Home has started to tailor off a little bit and dip, because most of the people that wanted things already have them now. They bought it and bought things for their home. So yeah, there's a lot of moving puzzle pieces right now. I don't know if I know necessarily what the answer is moving forward. Yet to be determined.
No, it's good, because it is one of those things that happens where travel was shut down. Now starting to go back and forth. And I think the other part that I think is helpful, and I've had this conversation with people just about life in general. Like sometimes people say, "Well, I want things to go back to normal." It's like you need to that bus left. Like just stop it. We go back to normal. And what I love what you talked about is also the fact that if you can change the habit versus like cutting something off. And I think the big thing, whether it's eating, whether it's medical, whether it's exercise, I think what I try to tell people, like, this is an opportunity still for a while. Like, it's a blank slate. It's time for you to step back a little bit, how you managing your work life, your relationship with your family, your kids. Like, this is one of those times where you have to actually step up and have a conversation with people that are important in your life and kind of tell them where you're at. I think it's more of an opening for if people are having mental challenges or whatever. Everybody I talk to is like, look, guys, whatever you do, like, don't try to come up with now we got a new plan, a new prescription. Like, we're still in a squirrely time. So I'm glad you said that, because there is a residential, there is a commercial, but I have some good friends that live and breathe in the stress world. And what they said is when you have a major trauma, everybody bands together. They like kumbaya trying to get fine. And then everybody starts to go on their own way. And then a lot of people start to feel like, oh my God, I have no connection to anything. So there's also like a dip that can happen. The dip will happen if you don't open your mouth and have a conversation and reach out to others. And that's why the quote, what's most secret is most common. Whatever you think you have that's going on, if there's one thing that I would say that I've learned during Biggest Loser, after Biggest Loser, being a dad of many, many years, and being married to my wife 41 years, open your mouth, have a conversation, even if you really don't want to. And because I think that's really, and which is why I was really glad when you were here today, because I knew you, like you and I talked for like days on end, and we will come back and talk. But that's when I opened by saying that you're somebody that lives a life that you love and live it well. And I also said you're not going to live it perfectly. Why I know you're that kind of person is I know that to be the case of how I've known you. I know how people feel about you. And I also know that you're the kind of person that if I was challenged and I had something, or if I'm doing something going forward, I know I can trust you. And the conference like, Chris, I got to tell you what, I may look like I've got my stuff together here, but the wheels are falling off and I'm losing it. People need to find those kinds of people that they can trust. I mean, that is as important as anything else, the well-being for our thinking, as you know. So I don't know what else other to say other than it's been a long time. We have not seen each other in person. I don't even know how long it's been, Chris. It could be 10 years. Could be 10 years.
Very well. If I think back correctly, the last time I saw you in person was just after your show. Just after you got
I think
off
it was
the
you
show.
and your brother Jenny and
6
I were
months.
there, and yeah.
That's right.
Where was that?
We did see you. We did catch up maybe a year later. That was in California, wasn't it?
It was in California. I don't know how that happened.
Yes.
Somehow that had happened along that line.
I think you guys happened to be there at the same time we were, or something.
Yeah. So
you're right. That was after. That was a little after.
Yeah, but talking with you is like riding a bike. So Chris, in closing, like I said, there's a lot of things you and I can talk about, and we will. There are other things I want to have you come back on, and some other specific things, and thank you also for being part of this community and contributing and being there, and you'll be an ongoing contributor. I know the things that are going to help people because that's who you are. Anything you got up your sleeve? You don't have to, but anything in closing you want to share?
Oh boy, there'd be a lot of things. One is one of the last things you talked about was sharing with other people. If you have any kind of Christian association or Christian faith, there's always this push in Christian circles to be transparent with your sins and tell others and confess, right? Because it's kind of redeeming, and you can grow from it. That's the same thing here. When you're struggling, don't try to take it alone. Confess it. Bring it to someone else and realize you're not alone. This little fit guy here, bald guy, he struggled with it a long time ago. And although it was over 30 years ago, I would try to help anyone that I could, because that is just as fresh in my memory today as if it was yesterday. Even though it was 33 years ago now, it's just as fresh. So I would still do anything I could to help someone. So number one, I would say, share, turn to others, ask for help. Don't be afraid. Number one.
Right.
And then number two is, and we've talked about this, my background being strength, is just remember that don't think with just the scale. Think back to what we're here for, going beyond the scale. People think if I touch weights, I'm going to gain weight. That's the wrong framing of a conversation. It's not about weight. It's about health and body composition. That little bit of extra strength and weight you might gain from muscle increases the calories you burn in the day. And I told this story to you last week, Jay, and I'll end here. But if you and I were the same height, and our body composition was only different by 10 pounds of muscle, the 15 Izenga I asked you. So let's say we were only 10 pounds off, and I have 10 pounds more muscle than you. If you and I were sitting all day long on the couch watching Lord of the Rings, I could eat up to 500 calories of more popcorn than you and not gain any weight, because my internal furnace muscles are burning calories sitting there. So don't be afraid to strength train and get away from the focus of just the scale. That's why I'm here. It's not just the scale. It's going beyond the scale.
I love it. Excellent way to wrap everything up, Chris. Chris, thank you so much for being here. Continue to be great husband, great dad, great person to others, and giving them the opportunity to see what they can create for them, and themselves for creating a life that they love and living it well. And we need more people like you out there. And I know that's who you are. So I don't have to tell you to do it. You do it all the time. So thank you for being here. And with that, we will be back another time with Chris. You can count on that in the future. And I look forward to when we're going to put it in there. Chris is going to be in a panel that we're going to put up on the website. It'll be probably in a few weeks, but he's going to be one of my muscle mentors. And it's going to be interesting, Chris. I have never in my life ever set out to gain 15 pounds of muscle. I am friggin' clueless. I've never tried to measure it that way. And so I'm looking forward to being a guinea pig, and we'll see how that works, however long it takes and whatever's good. But I'm bound and determined we're going to put that 15 on. And I'm not worried about the 15 coming off, because I do, like what you said, the furnace is going to help burn that as well. And with your help and support, I know that'll be something that you and I'll both learn in the process. Okay.
You got it, man. Looking forward to it. I appreciate it.